hear you. It's a little faint, but we're trying to work on the volume. It sounds like it's coming.
Do we want to get everyone in the room, or do we want, can I call the meeting to order?
I think we just need one more moment.
Thank you. Do we have some technical issues?
Yeah, I think we can get better sound here. We're just trying to work on that for a second.
You must be close to the microphone, Tom, because I could hear you very well.
Oh, okay, okay. Looking to see if you can find the plug. Okay. You want to just grab a sandwich while we're waiting, folks? Just around the corner, so oh, okay. There you go. Enjoying sunshine. Yes, nice. What's needed? It's amazing what a community does. Shocking to see the trail.
Good. It was an interesting day. Yeah.
Is that Malcolm White that walked in?
It is, yes.
We have all the heavyweights here today. Thank you and welcome. That does alleviate any concerns that I have about not getting the right information today.
Yeah, I get that.
I guess it raises the profile of our EDC significantly when everybody comes to the meetings. Thank you very much for the recognition.
Is there any way you can turn them up?
Yeah. We're looking for,
Oh, yeah.
Are we all set, Tom?
just waiting. I saw Bill out in the hallway. I think he's okay.
Bill is going to stay out till he is appointed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, full of the microphone and a speaker. I don't give that to you. It's originally supposed to be in here, but we can get an extension.
Yeah.
No. I'll get you an extension. What is that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not gonna get that. Okay, so if you go to This one. Can you hear that? Okay, so we're gonna try another speaker. Try another. That's- Okay, just. Hit the X button. Try it again.
Yeah.
We'll go test speaker microphone. And just hit yes, that's fine. Test.
Yeah.
It's coming out of there, right? Yeah. Okay, try. Try that one. Test. That's still coming out of there, right? Yeah.
Test. Test.
It's not yet. Make it- And then we'll- It's coming out of here instead of there.
Test.
Oh, and are you able to help with switching it to this? It's not.
Doing its own, pick it up.
It's coming out of here instead of here, right? It's a weird thing. Try this out.
Test.
PC still PC.
Maybe we can grab some speakers. Okay, thank you. Here you go. For now. I'll just-
You probably started with the-
Sure.
Move it over.
You wanna try the one? I don't know.
Okay, let me see the keyboard. If you guys want to get started, well, I'll try to sort it out.
Okay.
Rachel, if you're good, or start things, I'll just.
Okay, Joe, we'll work on the technical challenges there. We can get going, then we'll listen intently.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I can't see everyone there, Robin, so you can take attendance for the purposes of the minutes as to who's at the meeting, please. Any declaration of pecuniary interest by anyone on the board today? There is none. May I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda as presented and before you?
Moved by Sheila.
Seconded by
Rob.
Rob?
Yeah.
All in favor? Anyone against? Unanimous in favor. Thank you. Let's start with the adoption of the minutes. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the November 23rd, 2022 meeting? Moved by Paul. Seconded by,
Rob.
all in favor? Approved. The financial update issue, we'll skip that for the time being. Item 5, the presentation of Committee of Council presentation. Is Rachel going to give us that today?
Yes.
So if I move closer, this can be able to hear that.
Now, there's a caveat with respect to the orientation material. Some of that is old and may not necessarily apply to us. So I don't know how far Rachel's going to go with that.
Well, let's try this one.
Is that microphone volume better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Oh, try from back there.
Hi, Joe, it's Malcolm White. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. You look real good too today.
Oh, perfect.
Full of the cords here, everybody.
I'll tell my makeup people. I'm just here to give a bit of a preamble to Rachel Madison's presentation on meeting procedures. I understand sometimes there's some confusion where the EDC actually fits with respect to some municipal regulations and legislation, such as openness and transparency provisions and freedom of information legislation. So despite the fact that the EDC is incorporated separately, you are subject to both of those. Now, on the freedom of information side, you have had that tested back in 2012 or 2013 thereabouts. So you were found then, and a number of other EDCs around Ontario that have tested that and who have been incorporated the same way as the CBDC have been found to be subject to that. As well, you are subject to the openness and transparency requirements of the Municipal Act, the same as a board or committee of council, because if you look at how you are defined, despite the fact you're incorporated separately, you do fit the definitions of that. There's also been some tests on that as well. So with what Rachel is going to present, these are meeting procedures that come out of our procedure bylaw for council, and which we know complies with openness and transparency provisions. And what happens if you don't, your sister corporation tourism has already found that out. You can be challenged by a member of the public. That would go to the Ombudsman of Ontario, which investigates that sort of thing, and they will issue a ruling on it. Tourism had in reality fairly minor transgression, so it wasn't a big deal, but any of these things, when they happen, people to council as well have to give up a public area, so to speak. So we do talk to all our boards and committees, reminding them of the importance to comply with the procedure bylaw meeting provisions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rachel, and I'll let you continue on because I heard this presentation.
Madison Zupa, who's the Deputy City Clerk, will take tea with me. This is a presentation that we've been doing to all of our boards and committees. Local boards and committees of council will include advisory and other committees or boards whose members are appointed by council for an ongoing purpose. As well, we have special committees that can be appointed by council or the head of council from time to time as deemed necessary. So governance versus management. So council, or in this case, the board, will provide governance, oversight, planning, the big picture stuff. And then operations are the responsibility of staff to bring operational plans, strategies, budget, and so on. This, aligned with the corporate strategic plan approved by council, is speaking more to our presentations to committees of council, which are specifically resourced by staff, and the board in its advisory capacity then makes recommendations for council's consideration. And we talk about accountability and transparency. Those requirements include compliance with the Municipal Act, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, the city's procedure bylaw, and the code of conduct. And we'll touch on each of those.
So procedure bylaw 2022-100, it's council's procedure bylaw and applies to the calling and proceeding of meetings of council and local boards and committees. The committee is defined as any advisory or other committee, subcommittee, or similar entity of which at least 50% of the members are also members of one or more councils or local boards. And that we just put this into as well. Local boards do not include police services, boards, or public library boards. They have separate legislation that speaks to those boards and committees. We will speak to it a little bit further, but this also applies to subcommittees. So if you develop a subcommittee for a specific task or a special purpose, then the procedure bylaw would still apply. The definition of a meeting. The meeting means any regular, special, or meeting of a council, of a local board, or a committee of either of them where a quorum of members is present. I don't know what the composition of this. How many? Nine? Okay. And members discuss or otherwise deal with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision-making of the council, local board, or committee. So there may be times where you are out in the public or you're at an event and you will have a quorum of members. Just be mindful not to materially advance any of the business that would normally be discussed at this table. That's a big caveat because we do find there are times when we're all together. If you're at like I said, like an event out in the community, you might all be present, but as long as you're not materially advancing the business of the committee, that's okay. And we also put this into where group email discussions can constitute a meeting. So it should not happen, and they don't meet the criteria for open meetings. So if you're sending an email to a quorum of the members of the board, that can constitute a meeting and should.
So the agenda is set by chair in consultation with the staff resource and posted to the city website at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting. A week is ideal if you can, and it should include all of your documentation that is attached to the agenda as well. Business is considered in the order set forth in the agenda, although the chair may vary that to make the meeting run smoother if necessary. And a member can ask that a motion is placed on the agenda, provided that they have a seconder.
So open meetings shall be open to the public and no person shall be excluded therefrom except for improper conduct. Notice of the meetings is published to the city website, including agenda and minutes. And obviously we go through our staff resources for that. We have a comms team to help with that. The public may record by video or audio. So you may have times where someone will come in and just sit as an observer and put a recording device on the side of the table, and that's okay. And subcommittees, again, are subject to procedural bylaw and open meeting provisions. Yeah, I'll let.
So our closed meeting slides are our first slide in the deck, because what we did was take that whole section of the act that prescribes meetings that can be enclosed and put them all in there. So things like security of the property, personal matters about an identifiable individual, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land. I would think that, I'm not going to read them all out to you. I would think that probably in your case, you're going to be using I and J where you have trade secrets that are going to affect somebody's competitive advantage, that sort of thing. And we also point out that this section is permissive, so you don't have to go into close to do it, but you may. And if you need any resource from us with respect to fitting under one of those sections, we're happy to help.
I'd pop in for 1 second, Rachel. I would just mention too, we're going to talk about electronic meetings shortly, but with closed meetings, sometimes if you're having a closed meeting before your open meeting, just make sure you live stream the reading of the motion, the passing of the motion. There have been ombudsman investigations related to passing of that motion. So if you pass it and it's not live streamed or it's not in open, there have been investigations, and it has been,
So last night we had closed before our regular budget meeting. So we met in open at 4 o'clock, broadcast to YouTube the reading of the motion that said why we were going into closed. And and then turned the YouTube off and proceeded to have our closed meeting. There are exceptions for educational or training sessions. So if the meeting is held for the purpose of educating or training, and again, there's no discussion to materially advance the business, you can do that. Council, as a general rule, has had their educational and training sessions in open, just to be as transparent as possible, but that exception is available to you.
So I started in the clerk's office in September of 2019, and then COVID happened. So we had to move really quickly on how to move from a traditional in-person meeting to an electronic platform, and that evolved over time. We'll get into the details, but we ended up with an electronic meeting platform that we use and have live streamed all of the board and committee meetings. The big thing is to ensure that the public has information and access to the meeting to be able to observe the decision making in real time. So one of the things we point out is to have the link to the YouTube channel embedded into your agenda. We do still want to protect the meeting from unwanted activity or unwanted visitors, that kind of thing. There have been Zoom bombing in the past, and so we still try to ensure the security of the meeting, but we want to make sure it's as transparent as possible. And what we found actually, the live stream has engaged more people. More people are watching. Maybe they couldn't see it right at noon, but they're like, oh, what happened at this meeting? And they'll go back and watch it later on. We've actually found more engagement by having the meetings on our YouTube channel. And these points here are results of investigations that have happened in the past throughout the process of getting things online. Prior to the amendments to the Municipal Act, you could participate in a meeting electronically, but you didn't count as quorum. So now the Municipal Act has changed. We haven't seen any indication of moving that out again. So you can count as quorum. And it's really a helpful tool for if you're not well or you're traveling or whatever reason. We still encourage people to meet in person because there's a certain social dynamic and things like that. But there are times where you will be not able to do that and still want to be part of the voting and the decision making. So certainly something that we have available to us. One of the decisions, though, if a live stream is lost during the meeting, it's not considered open anymore and you must adjourn. So whether that's for 5 minutes to get your tech worked out, that's fine. You could just take a quick break. But there was one instance where a committee had continued on the meeting without the live stream and they were found to be in an improperly closed meeting.
So the municipal law provides that a person may request an investigation by the provincial ombudsman as to whether the council or board met improperly and closed. The ombudsman investigates, provides and publishes a report, and if found to have met improperly and closed, makes recommendations. And then the council or board must pass a resolution as to how it intends to address the report. And we have had 2 of those. It took a long time for being very simple investigations because they were both in November of 2021. But those investigations were complete and found that the meetings were improperly closed because there was a requirement that people could register and then participate by Zoom if they wanted to, as opposed to there being a link in the agenda to the YouTube that anybody could watch it without having to register. So that was their recommendation, and council passed a resolution saying that would be the best practice is to include the YouTube link on all agendas.
And I think it's important to point out too, we course corrected right after it happened. Like we were applying best practices right away. It was a learning process. It was a good learning process for us. But as soon as it happened, we realized, okay, there's something we need to improve here. And we started a best practice going forward straight away. So rules and conduct of conduct and debate, the chair presides and the board and committee are held in committee of the whole. So, I mean, for council, you'd see formalities where, through you, Mr. Mayor, to councillor so-and-so, where the rules of procedure are a little bit more relaxed for that, or the time limits and how many times someone can speak to it. I mean, certainly the chair has the ability to manage those discussions and that debate. And the conduct of members and members shall not disobey the provisions of the bylaw or the decision of the chair on questions of order of practice or upon the interpretation of rules of procedure, or breach parliamentary decorum. So the chair can certainly manage the conduct of the board, and we'll leave that to them.
Motions should be in writing, and the operative clause commences with the words resolved that, and the action, they should be moved and seconded. A member who wants to introduce a motion that hasn't been on your agenda, that's circulated, that's substantive, should introduce it as a notice of motion. So if somebody were to bring something forward at this meeting, it would be a notice of motion, and then it would appear on your next agenda as a motion. And that's part of transparency, so that there aren't things being discussed that the public wasn't previously aware were going to be on the agenda. So subject to a motion to reconsider, a motion once it's decided is not introduced for 12 months. That's just to keep members from just bringing back something that has already been decided. It can be done on a motion to reconsider, but that motion has to be moved or seconded with a member who voted with the prevailing side. So if it passed, somebody who voted for it. If it was defeated, somebody who voted against it. And then it can be seconded by either a member who voted with the prevailing side or a member who is absent. So then you can bring that back for reconsideration before the 12 months has elapsed.
So relevance of debate on all motions, discussion must be relevant to subject under consideration. That's for both open and closed. I think particularly in closed, you want to make sure you stay right on task so you don't end up talking about other things that were approved by your originating motion. So and the chair can facilitate those discussions, but make sure to stay on task. And in open, if there's something that comes up, you can have like Rachel was talking about, a motion that would bring it to the next meeting. And again, it's all to make sure that the notice to the public is fair and they have an opportunity to understand what's being discussed. So quorum, the mayor is an ex officio member of all committees, but not counted in quorum. No business shall be considered unless a quorum is present. And quorum is a majority of members and is lost during a meeting. And if it's lost during the meeting would end. We talked a little bit about that already. However, if quorum is lost by virtue of the declaration of conflict of interest, you can still continue that discussion unless it's, well, we'll talk about it in a minute, but unless it's less than two voting members, right? You don't want to get in that situation. But certainly if you have 9 members, 5 are in attendance and you lose one because of a conflict of interest, you only have 4 members, that can still proceed. So the administration, so the secretary shall keep the minutes and record without note or comment. So we really just emphasize that the decision points and the action items that are discussed with the board should be included in the minutes. We'll provide notice of the meetings, post the meetings, minutes and agenda to the website, or coordinate with our comms department to do that, and perform any of the clerical functions as required. So the chair of the committee votes. Sometimes there's a misconception that the chair only votes in the event of a tie. That's not correct. The chair of the committee votes. And a recorded vote, everyone votes, there's no abstentions, and a recorded vote will sometimes get called. I don't know if you have them very often with this board, but just to have in the minutes who voted in what way. So it'll reflect in the minutes the actual, the voting member's name and the way in which they voted. And a tied vote is defeated.
So again, the Ombudsman of Ontario, so in addition to investigating closed meetings, they can also review complaints about our administrative actions and decisions in terms of process, and is our process fair, that sort of thing. But they can't overturn the decisions that are made or direct public policy, but they will look at complaints that are about process.
So the Integrity Commissioner investigates the application of code of conduct for members of council and local boards. I just wanted to make a note that we are currently undertaking a review of our code of conduct. We can certainly circulate the code of conduct that exists as of today. The province did put out an input. They wanted municipalities to provide input on the code of conduct, but we haven't seen the outcomes of that yet. So we're going to move forward and make some suggested changes to council to our code of conduct and bring that, once we have an updated version of that, we can bring that to the group as well. The application of any procedures, rules, and policies governing ethical behavior. applications of conflicts of interest to members in council and local boards, requests from members for advice regarding obligations under the Code of Conduct, procedures, rules, policies, or the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and provision of educational information regarding any of the above items. So I spoke to the Code of Conduct. Like we said, we're going to be doing a fulsome review of it this year, but the Municipal Act requires that a Code of Conduct be established for municipal councils, advisory committees, and local boards. It addresses things like gifts and benefits, confidentiality, use of board property, influence on staff, and improper use of influence. And I imagine this board does deal with items that are confidential in nature. So I always put an extra star beside that one. Complaints alleging violation are investigated by the Integrity Commissioner, and the results of the inquiry are reported to both council and the board.
When we talk about municipal conflict of interest act, that's where a member has a pecuniary or financial interest, whether it's direct or indirect, and whether it's positive or negative in a matter that's present at a meeting. And then the members should disclose that interest. They're not to take part in any of the discussion or try to influence the vote. There's a requirement that there's a written disclosure that your staff resource would keep, and shall not attempt to influence before, during, or after the meeting. And in a closed session, they would leave the room. In an open, it's optional. If you're absent from a meeting where you had a conflict, it should be declared at the first meeting that you attend afterwards. The disclosure is recorded in the minutes. And as Madison talked about earlier, if you lose quorum because of a conflict of interest, you can continue to. An indirect pecuniary interest is where the member is a shareholder, has a controlling interest, is a director, or is a member of a body that has a pecuniary or financial interest, just so that you can't say, well, that's not me personally, that's my corporation. And we tried to simplify it. I think it's on the next slide, just the questions to ask yourself. So do I have a financial interest in the decision, whether that's positive or negative? Does it directly affect my finances or those of my parent, spouse, or child? Is it indirect in being a shareholder, corporate officer, etc.? If yes, and it's not subject to exemptions, declare a conflict in writing and do not attempt to influence the voting. And the exceptions include if you've got one if you've got a financial interest, but it's common with all of the members generally, then that would count as an exception. Or if it's so remote or insignificant that it's not reasonably likely to influence you. We like to use the example of I'm going to buy you a sandwich. It's generally not going to influence how you proceed.
So Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This is something that we worked through in the past. It's meant to protect the privacy of individuals, to provide for the disclosure of certain records upon request. Best practice is to release the documents which are already publicly available, so agendas, minutes, council reports, those types of things. And the communications regarding the business of the municipality are considered a record regardless of whether device is personal or not. And we do have, the municipality has a record retention program, and our suggestion, is obviously it can be used as a best practice for the board. And we also wanted to just make it really clear that there's sometimes a misconception too, that just because it's on my personal device, it doesn't mean it's a corporate record. If you use your personal device to talk about business, it becomes a corporate record. And certainly if an FOI comes in through the municipality or through another means, we work through that together. And communications and surveys, we throw this one into just to note that boards and committees are subordinate and accountable to city council. We really love getting input from the community. We want to put surveys out there. We want to talk about matters that are important. And getting feedback is great. Not all the feedback is going to be positive. We get that. But we don't want to start communications or surveys that are critical of city council or members. It's just not appropriate. So we've had instances in the past, not this board necessarily, but in the past where it's gone out that way. And we want to just make sure that we're collecting information, collecting input appropriately.
That's as fast as we could go.
I don't know if there's any questions or. And if there's questions that come up later on, pop it over.
You know where to find us.
Welcome to the world of municipal public meetings.
I have questions, but I don't like going first, so that's probably me going first. So Malcolm brought up the fact that I think it was around 2012, there was a decision that said the Economic Development Corporation was subject to freedom of disclosure similar to a municipality, but would you agree with me that in 2012, the Economic Development Corporation was material funded and constituted differently than it is today?
I'm gonna say I'm gonna follow up with our legal department.
So 3.5 years ago, there's some big changes that happened. So 2012 was 2012. And today, the Economic Development Corporation, I would say, is still separate. And then the committee itself, where the Economic Development Corporation provides the economic committee resources to the city, I would suggest that that's subject to all the freedom of information, subject to municipality, but not the corporation itself.
I haven't actually read the IPC decision,
Right.
so.
So that, once again, just really focusing on the difference is that 3.5 years ago, there was pretty much a severance between the Economic Development Corporation proper from the city, from funding and things of that nature. And then there was a management agreement put in place so that the city would provide some resources to the corporation, but the corporation would also form part of this committee for economic development.
To be honest, I wouldn't be able to comment on that. That would probably be more suited to Jeff King.
And it may be the sort of thing that, and one doesn't want another IPC decision, but it may be the best you.
That's what might happen, right?
Exactly.
Okay, we probably proactive.
That's what I would suggest, is to follow up after the meeting with the legal department, because I certainly, we don't deal with FOIs in our department. We attempted to shift things over last night at budget, but it certainly is a function of our legal team right now, so I'm going to comment on the FOIs.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excuse me, as chair, I'm going to exercise some power here. There's obviously a difference of opinion on that issue, and I don't want to debate it. We've got a long agenda. I don't think we're going to advance Paul's position or the city's position on that issue right now, and I don't think we need to right now. So can we move on then with the agenda? Paul, I'm sorry, but
I was done, Joe.
Yeah, I think we said.
oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. I'd like to now, if no one has walked out of the room, deal with the directors.
Thanks, guys.
Rachel, you're ready to go if you can go. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Let us know if there's any other questions.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the resignation of Steve McCoy. May I have a mover and a seconder to accept his resignation from the board? Moved by Robert, seconded by, is that Sam in the corner? Yes. All in favor? I'd like resolved that the Board of Directors of Sault Ste. Marie Economic Development Corporation accept the resignation of Stephen McCoy from his position on the Board of Directors of the said corporation effective January 24th, 2023, and extends its appreciation to his volunteerism. All in favor? All. Next matter. I'd like to say hello to Gagnon Vaughn, wherever he may be seated.
Yeah, Gannon's not here today, Joey.
Oh, okay, that's not a good start, Tom.
No, exactly. You felt bad about missing the person.
Stephanie Harmon,
Stephanie's the same. She's away today.
and what about Gerald?
We have Gerald here. Hey.
Gerald, it's nice to see someone with more white hair than I have. Welcome to the board. May I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution? Whereas council of the city of Sault Ste. Marie is appointed to the Board of the Economic Development Corporation, EDC of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, Gannon Vaughn, Stephanie Harmon, and Gerald Fowler. And whereas the current Board of Directors of the corporation accept the said appointments, therefore be it resolved that the said individuals are hereby members of the Board of the EDC and that the minute book and relevant documents of the corporation be updated to reflect the said appointments. May I have a mover and a seconder? Paul moves, second. Sheila? All in favor? Approved. We should have put off the presentation, given that the new appointees weren't here. May I have a mover and a seconder that resolve that the EDC appoints Bill Freiberger as a director, filling the vacancy left from the resignation of Stephen McCoy.
Mr.
May I have a
Chair,
mover?
before we get to there, I'm just curious on the city board appointees. I was reappointed. So does that mean my term is over and I have to be in a resolution? So I'm not in.
Sorry, Robert, I didn't hear that.
The city passed a resolution appointing its 4 members, and you are one of those. So I don't know if that counts as the resolution formally appointing, or you need one now.
I don't know. You need your new one.
You need real.
6.2, Joe. It's the 3 new board members, but I was reappointed at the same with the same council resolution. So I'm assuming that my term ended and that's restarted. So I think I need to be part of that.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, the previous council doesn't have authority to make appointments to this one, right? So you would have to be here. So maybe just a move to amend the resolution to include the name of Robert Brewer as the 4th appointee of the city.
May I have a seconder for that amendment to add Robert's name? Sam? Well, the resolution stands as it is with the addition of Robert's name. All in favor then? Okay, thank you. Now, can we deal with Bill? I have a mover and a seconder. I thought we had that. Robert moves, second by Sheila. Thank you. Resolved that EDC appoint Bill Freiberger as a director, filling the vacancy left from the resignation of Stephen McCoy. All in favor of that resolution? It's good. Thank you. Approved. The next resolution is resolved that the EDC appoint Bill Freiberger as treasurer.
Joe, we lost your volume.
Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2.
You're
good.
back. That's good.
Mover and a seconder for the resolution appointing Bill Freiberger as the treasurer of the corporation. Mover Robert moved, seconder Paul. All in favor? Approved. Can someone knock on the door and get Bill into the room?
He's got him back now.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Next matter on the agenda is 6.5. Past board member recognition. You're going to speak to that, Rick?
I haven't anything prepared for that part, Joe.
Any new business then? Is there anything that you want to speak on, Rick, from items 7 right through to 8.1?
8.1.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Planning. So just an update on the priority plans, the growing economic development of Sault Ste. Marie, which was the first initiative. That one's proceeding with the partnership with CBC. So I can say we've got good traction on number 1. Number 2, on the city website under incentives and programs, we have located a government website that we've now incorporated into it. So we're making progress there. We're making it accessible not only on the city website, but on the website for Millworks as well. So good progress there. Initiative number 3, focus on redeveloping the waterfront as a means of attracting tourists. This one, I think we're gonna have to have further discussion as we move forward. This was kind of not gone anywhere as of yet. Any comments, questions?
Anyone else have any questions? That being said, I'd like to have a mover and a seconder to go into closed session because of matters that we will be discussing involve trade secret, scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the board, which if disclosed could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group, persons, or organization. I have a mover and a seconder to go into closed session. Moved by Bill, second by Sheila. All in favor? We're in closed session. Are we off the live feed now?
Just need 2 seconds.